Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you watch this video. I want to welcome you once again to this specific channel. Today we are having something new, and that is we are preparing 3% volume in volume hydrogen peroxide solution. The person presenting to you, or the person you're listening to, her voice is by the names of Miss Atiang Grace, and I'm so delighted to take you through this once again, and I'm so excited to take you through this. I love to speak, I love to teach, because we learn everything every time we learn something new, and we get to interact with a number of personalities and the rest. So I'm so glad that we are meeting once again for this specific session, and then I would love you to endeavor to watch it up to the end so that you pick something and you pick the basics in the practicals, because you need to know basics when you are preparing for exams, when you're preparing for your practicals, because if you know what you're doing, it will reduce you from panicking. And remember, most of the practicals that we do, we have limited time, so you ideally have to go prepared and well prepared so that you don't panic, and because you don't have time to think, you don't have a lot of time to think, and just like the theory papers, you have like 3 hours, you can remember a number of things, you have to think and the rest. But with practical, you're given less time, and in that less time, you need to be well prepared, well equipped, know what you're doing, know the next steps, and know the basics. So we shall be going through the basics of how we can prepare 3% volume in volume hydrogen peroxide, and not only the 3%, in case you're required to prepare maybe 6% and other percentages of volume in volume hydrogen peroxide, you use ideally the same procedure. That's why I'm saying we are looking at the basics. You have the same equipments, you have the same procedure, only that maybe your working formula will be a bit different. Okay, so let us look at what are the requirements we need when we are preparing hydrogen peroxide, irrespective of what percentage they have asked us to prepare. We see that hydrogen peroxide solution is what we need. We need a concentrated solution of hydrogen peroxide. So hydrogen peroxide is a solution itself. And then we need purified water. So when we are dealing with the two solutions, we are diluting the concentrated solution to make it a dilute preparation. The same happens to alcohols. In case you are preparing ethanol, maybe 90% from 96%, you are diluting. So it is ideally the same procedure. Whenever you are required to dilute any preparation, please take note of what procedure we are going to use, because it is the same for every dilution procedure. The working formula may be different, but the procedure for dilution is the same. Apparatus you are required to use, we need a measuring cylinder, we need droppers, we need a filter funnels, and then we need a filter paper. Okay, and then here comes two questions. One is saying prepare 100 ml of 3% volume in volume hydrogen peroxide solution, where we have a stock solution of hydrogen peroxide is 6% volume in volume. The second question says prepare 200 ml of 6% volume in volume hydrogen peroxide solution, where your stock solution of hydrogen peroxide is 50% volume in volume. So how do we generate a working formula? The above preparations require application of dilution method. So we have two methods of preparing a working formula. One, we have what we call enlargement, or reduction of the formula, and that we already have a video on it, or we have a lecture on it. Please look out for it in the same channel so that you know how do we enlarge or reduce a formula. And then the second way we can use is what we call dilution method. We have to dilute a preparation, and then we use or we calculate for the working formula using dilution method. We also have what we call alligation method. So under dilution, you can as well do the alligation or dilution based on how the question has been presented to you. So dilution of a solution is one of the most frequent required or carried out calculations in pharmacy. In the Department of Pharmacy, you cannot run away from dilution of solutions. Whether you are in a hospital setting, you may have extemporaneous preparations that you may need to dilute. Even when you're working in a manufacturing unit, or if you're in the study section, you still have to carry out these dilution methods. So it is carried out, is a common calculation that is carried out in the field of pharmacy, and you can't run away from it. So you need to embrace it, and you need to know it by heart or at your fingertips. Okay, a stock solution or a concentrate must often be diluted to a particular strength for patient use. This type of calculation is particularly common for antiseptic and disinfectant preparations. Note, simple calculations can be derived. Okay, so let us see what we have to do. We see that the mass of active before dilution should be the same as the mass of the active after dilution. However, if you're dealing with concentration, we see that the concentration of the active is the same as the mass of the active divided by the volume of the active. So the mass of active will be concentration of the active multiplied by the volume of the active, or the volume of the solution. So that is why we see that for us, so we see that before dilution, the concentration of the active is multiplied by the volume of the solution, and it should be equivalent to the concentration of the active of the multiplied by the volume of the solution after dilution. So, and that brings us to this specific equation of dilution that we are well conversant with. We have seen it so many times. We see that concentration 1 multiplied by volume 1 should be the same as concentration 2 multiplied by volume 2, and this is how it is derived. So you have to note something. For this equation to hold, both the concentrations must be expressed in the same units, and both volumes must also be expressed in the same units. So let us see, we have to answer now our first and second equation or questions we put in the other slide. We see that fill in the appropriate values in the equation. And what is the equation? Concentration 1 multiplied by volume 1 should be equals to concentration 2 multiplied by volume 2. Okay, and then we see that rearrange the equation to find the unknown, or in other words, define the terms in the equation as by your question. We see that even in the first question, they are saying that our concentration 1, what we have in stock is 6% volume in volume. Okay, it becomes our first concentration. However, we do not know the volume. Okay, but we know the concentration, the second concentration, like what they're asking us to prepare, which is 3% volume in volume, right? And then we also know the second volume, and that volume is 100 mils. Okay, so we need to know how much of the 6% do we need to measure. So by you expressing this, it gives you marks. Okay, you need to define the equation itself. So when you define the equation itself, you get marks for defining it. Are we together? So we put things in the equation. We say that 6 multiplied by volume 1 should be the same as 3 multiplied by 100. So we are looking for unknown, which is volume 1. We are going to divide 3 multiplied by 100 divided by 6 to give us the answer, which is 50 milliliters or 50 mils. Are we together? And that brings us to the working formula. So that the working formula, we have hydrogen peroxide 6% volume in volume should be 50 mils. And then purified water should be sufficient to make 100 mils. Let's see our procedure. Wash hands with detergent and running water. Make sure your hands are clean before you start any procedure, whether weighing, whether measuring. Make sure that you clean yourself. For ladies, tie your hair. Make sure that it doesn't touch your clinical coat or your gown or the garment you are using for preparing, because we want to avoid any contamination. In manufacturing unit, we prefer to cover the hair. Okay, cover the hair, even protect your eyes, where we have the goggles that we use in manufacturing unit or that are used in manufacturing unit, and you find that we try to avoid cross contamination of your product. And then after you have washed, wipe hands with a clean cloth and put on gloves. Remember, hydrogen peroxide is a concentrated preparation, and it is corrosive, and because of that you need to put on gloves when you're preparing them. Measure 50 mils of your 6% volume in volume. Remember, it is the one which is in stock, hydrogen peroxide, using a measuring cylinder. After you measure that, mix the measured amount of hydrogen peroxide solution with a small volume of purified water. First mix with a small volume, okay? And then after you've mixed with a small volume, transfer that volume to the 100 ml measuring cylinder. And then after you have transferred, you are now going to top up to the volume. That is why we are saying that add purified water sufficient to produce 100 mils of the preparation. And then after you have done, if any turbidity or impurity persists, filter the solution. It's not a must you have to filter it, but if you're seeing any particles in your solution or any turbidity, make sure that you have a clear preparation or a clear solution. So for filtration, in this case, it is not a must for you to filter it. Then pack and label the product. Pack and label the product. And this is how you will label your product. The quantity, we are preparing 100 mils, and then the name of your preparation is hydrogen peroxide solution, 3% volume in volume. Composition, you have hydrogen peroxide 6% volume in volume, 50 mils. Purified water sufficient to produce 100 mils. Direction for use as directed by the physician, and then use antibacterial and antiseptic. Storage, store in a cool, dry place and preserve it well-filled container out of reach of children. Batch, allocate a batch. Manufacturing date, have your date, and then expiry date, allocate any date. Manufacturer's name should always be indicated. If it is a prescription, you should have the name of the patient, and the direction for use will already be given in a prescription. Okay, so the manufacturer's name is Grapharm Academy Pharmaceuticals, and then their address is in Gulu, Uganda, the Pearl of Africa. So that will have been your label. So after that, you need to note down some things. We see that if you are required to prepare 3% hydrogen peroxide solution, it is used as antiseptic in management of wounds and arresting bleeding. And then if you're preparing 1.5% volume in volume, hydrogen peroxide is used as antimicrobial agent in management of bacterial infections in the mouth, hence prepared as a mouthwash. 1.5% as well, volume in volume hydrogen peroxide is also used to soften the earwax, hence used as a eardrop. Okay, so there are some other questions here that you may need to try in your free time. Okay, endeavor to try these questions, please. you see that how many milliliters of 10% weight in volume solution of antiseptic must be used to make 4 liters of 0.25% weight in volume solution. Your answer when you're doing these equations, your answer should be 100 mils. Why I have given you these questions? Because it is the same dilution method that we have looked at that you're going to apply. So try to practice on it, and if you get the answer as 100 mils, then you are correct. If you don't get 100 mils, then you didn't follow something or some procedures. How many milliliters of water must be added to 250 mils of an 18% weight in volume stock solution of sodium chloride to prepare 0.9% weight in volume sodium chloride solution? Your answer also should be 4,550 mils. Okay. How many mils of a 1 in 5,000 solution of phenyl mercuric nitrate can be made from 250 mils of 0.2% weight in volume solution of the compound? Your answer should be 2,500 mils. Okay, you are supplied with 50 grams of salicylic acid. The salicylic acid, most people know it as aspirin. Yeah, salicylic acid ointment, 2% weight in weight. What weight of emulsifying ointment or diluent should be added to reduce the concentration of salicylic acid to 0.5% weight in weight? Your answer should be, after you have done the calculation, you should get 150 grams. Okay. So that brings us to the end. Thank you so much for listening to this specific